Hi, and welcome to the first show in the series Lies, Damn Lies, and Sporting Statistics. I'm Sherlock Homer, along with my friend Grant Watson, Rainier, and we are on this show to talk about sports statistics. This show is brought to you by EPSN, especially pertinent statistical nerds. So this is for those of you who love to follow EPSN and statistics. And let's face it, what would a sports broadcast today be without statistics? So one of the events this week that jumped right out of us, that stimulated this discussion, the Dodgers playing the Cardinals in a one-off game. And in the seventh inning, Dave Roberts, the Dodgers manager, brings in Chris Taylor, who has been struggling for some time. His last 22 games, he was averaging 121. He'd also had a neck injury. What was Roberts thinking about? A terrible decision from a statistical point of view. But as it turns out, Taylor ends up winning the game with a walk-off home run. What does that tell us about statistics? Surely Taylor should have been on the bench. Somebody else should have been at the bat. And who knows? We don't know how that would have worked out. Grant, am I right about this? That somebody hitting 121 should never be allowed to get to the plate in a big situation?
Yeah, Howard, if you think about statistics and the way we tend to handle them, that is, we look at them, they're calculated one time, and we tend to run with them without compensating for the fact that they're constantly changing. And for example, a batter who hits 300, that 300 rides with him through the game into the next game and helps determine batting orders and the rest of it, but doesn't reflect anything about how he got to that 300. He could have hit 1,000 for the first few times at bat, and then struck out repeatedly after that and still had a 300 batting average, as opposed to another batter who did it in just for the reverse. And so who would you put your money with, or who would you bet on? Of course, it would be the one that has a change towards the higher hitting percentage. But statistics and the way they're being handled doesn't account for that.
Yes, now I see there you have your book, Intuitive Rationality, in which you're the lead author, that talks about the marriage of intuition and statistics and some of the biases that influence our perception. Now, one of them that seems relevant in this discussion of somebody who's in a slump coming to the plate would be something like the hot hand bias, right?
It could be the hot hand bias in this case being just the reverse, that he's had a cold hand bias. And it's been going on for some period of time. The question is, what has been the sequence of those various times at bat that led to that series of no hits? And it could be that when you look at that sequence as opposed to just the overall statistic, you get a completely different view. In other words, when you start including the ongoing changes to our biases that we have about, in this case, hitters in a baseball game, that we would see something totally different than what the statistics are shown and what commentators are using for statistics.
Yeah, so what you're saying really is the statistics that are trotted out typically, like how a batter has been doing over the last month or two, is a very limited number. We could dig much deeper, couldn't we? We could say, what does Chris Taylor hit when he has toast for breakfast, as opposed to something else, or cereal? Or who did he talk to in the dugout? Does that influence his batting average? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that has to be taken into account. And in our technology, we do take that into account in sports applications, and including things like, for example, a rate at which we forget the older statistics and remember the newest, most current ones. That's what we do. But when when you average up, or when you add up all of the at bats over a significant period of time, without compensating for the fact that the oldest ones have generally been decayed away in terms of memory, the result is you get something totally different than reality.
Yes.
And so in this case, his batting average probably misrepresented what he could actually do at the next time at bat. And he could have easily been, before this string of no hits, hitting 300. But that all we know is that, in fact, over the last so many times at bat, he has not had any hits. So we have to take it into account, have to take time into account and how it affects statistics. And that's something that is generally not done.
Yes, and how it's framed, because it is easier, especially with media, to make the statistic more dramatic and just say, oh, in the last 8 games, this guy's struck out 7 times or 10 times or hasn't hit it. But what if you go back 30 games? And as you rightly say, the hot hand bias, sort of like the gambler's fallacy, is, well, if somebody is doing really well, they'll keep doing it. Or they're doing really poorly, they'll keep doing it.
That's correct. And we know that sooner or later, that doesn't continue, that at some point the curve changes, the performance, the behavior changes, and the bias changes from a cold hand to a hot hand. And so there's this up and down cyclical kind of thing that goes on. People will look at it for patterns over some period of time, and maybe there might be some pattern, but in general, it's pretty unreliable to try to relate last year's pattern of batting behavior to this year's pattern of behavior. The best way is to be able to account for statistics and discount them in terms of time passed and how time affects old data as opposed to new data. And that's what our technology does. So in this case, it could have been that our technology would have been right in line with the coach's decision to have him be part of the lineup and the batting lineup at that point in the game.
So perhaps I owe Dave Roberts an apology, because clearly it is not just data. There is intuition and other factors going on that determine a decision. And it's only, of course, in hindsight, can we say, oh, well, that was a good decision, or that wasn't a good decision, and he really should have done something else, something that frequently comes up, and we'll talk more about on lies, damn lies, and sporting statistics. So we're entering into a weekend where I'm sure there'll be more controversy about decisions and decision-making. In the meantime, if you want to discover more, Grant and a guy called Howard Rankin have written a book called Intuitive Rationality, which is looking at combining rationality with intuition and recognizing the limits of statistics. So we'll continue to explore them on the show. So we'll see you on 4th and goal, or the bottom of the 9th, or whatever it is, where decisions and statistics come into focus. Thanks for watching.